A simple favor turns into chaos. The metallic hum of Starbase Echo 7 filled the air as Ethan Gray adjusted the final calibration on the control panel. His hands were steady, working with precision. Being a station mechanic wasn't the most exciting job in the universe, but it paid well, and more importantly, it kept him away from trouble. At least, that's what he thought. Tonight, trouble had come knocking. Ethan wiped the grease from his hands as a shadow loomed over his workbench. He turned to see Garrus, a merchant who had a habit of dealing in questionable technology. "Ethan," Garrus greeted, his deep voice low. "Got a job for you." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "If it involves illegal tech, the answer is no." Garrus chuckled. "Relax. It's just an old artifact. Some kind of alien relic. It stopped working, and I need someone who actually knows what they're doing." Ethan hesitated. Ancient alien tech always came with risks, but a quick look at the device Garrus pulled out piqued his curiosity. It was small, round, and covered in glowing blue symbols. A thin layer of dust suggested it had been buried for centuries. "Just needs a power boost," Garrus said. "You're the best mechanic here. Help me out." Ethan sighed. "Fine, but if it explodes, you owe me a new workspace." Garrus grinned. "Deal." Ethan took the device to his workbench and began carefully inspecting it. The outer casing was made of a material he didn't recognize. The energy signature was weak, barely detectable. "All I need to do is reroute power to its core," he muttered to himself. "Easy." Famous last words. The mistake that changed everything. Ethan linked the device to his diagnostic scanner and adjusted the energy regulator. A soft hum filled the room as the ancient machine came to life. "See," he said. "Nothing to." The device pulsed. A sudden shockwave burst outward, knocking Ethan back. His ears rang as the station lights flickered. Sparks flew from his workbench, and Garrus let out a startled curse. "What the hell did you do?" Garrus shouted. Ethan scrambled to his feet, staring at the device. It was now floating, spinning rapidly, its blue glow intensifying. Something was happening. A loud crack split the air as the relic ripped open reality itself. A bright, swirling vortex formed above the device, pulsing with unnatural energy. And then she appeared. The arrival of the alien girl. From the swirling light, a figure stepped through. She was tall, her skin smooth like polished metal, but warm-looking. Her long, silver hair shimmered like liquid light. Strange violet eyes glowed with an inner fire. Her presence was overwhelming, as if the universe itself was bending around her. Ethan stumbled backward. Garrus. What did I just do?" The alien woman blinked, adjusting to her surroundings. Then she looked directly at Ethan. A slow smile spread across her lips. "You," she whispered, her voice carrying a strange musical hum. Ethan froze. She took a step forward. "Finally," she murmured. "You woke me up." Ethan's heart pounded. What?" Her eyes gleamed. "And now, you belong to me." Panic mode activated. Ethan raised his hands. "Okay, let's slow down." Before he could react, she moved. 1 second, she was across the room. The next, she was right in front of him. She reached out, touching his chest lightly. A wave of energy surged through his body. Every nerve in his system lit up, his muscles locking in place. "Whoa. Okay. Personal space." Ethan yelped, stumbling backward. Garrus grabbed a weapon from his belt. "Ethan, get away from her." Before he could fire, the alien girl flicked her wrist. Garrus's blaster disassembled itself midair. The pieces floated for a moment before clattering to the floor. Ethan stared. "You've got to be kidding me." The alien girl tilted her head. "Weapons are unnecessary." Garrus took a step back. "You know what? You two enjoy your conversation. I'll be somewhere else." He bolted out the door. Ethan didn't blame him. The alien girl watched him carefully, studying his face. You have no idea what you've done, do you? She asked, amusement dancing in her eyes. Ethan exhaled. No, but I have a feeling you're gonna tell me. She smiled. My name is Zyra. And you, Ethan Gray, are now part of something much bigger than you can imagine. Ethan groaned. That's never a good thing. Cliffhanger. The chaos begins. The station's alarms blared. A robotic voice echoed overhead. Wo Arning. Unidentified energy. Surgi DTECTD. All says URIT teams. Ruiz Boendi Edmemida Healy. Zura's eyes darkened. They're coming, she said. We need to leave. Ethan ran a hand down his face. Oh, come on. Can I at least get a 5-minute break before? Boom. The wall exploded inward. Ethan barely had time to react as heavily armed soldiers stormed in, weapons raised. The lead soldier's visor locked onto Zura. There she is, he growled. Contain the anomaly. Zura tilted her head. Then she smirked. Oh, she said softly. You poor fools. She raised her hand, and the entire room collapsed into chaos. The alien girl has no limits. Boom. The shockwave rippled through the station, sending debris and sparks flying as soldiers stormed the workshop. Their heavy armor gleamed under the flickering emergency lights, and their weapons were locked onto Zura. Ethan threw himself behind a crate as blaster fire erupted around him. Stand down, the lead soldier barked. The anomaly must be contained. Ethan peeked over the crate, heart hammering. Zura stood completely still. She didn't flinch. She didn't move. She just watched them with an unreadable expression. Then, slowly, she tilted her head. Oh, you poor creatures, she murmured. The air shifted. The soldiers stiffened as a strange pressure filled the room, as if gravity itself had changed. One soldier took a cautious step forward. Target acquired. Engaging containment field. He never got the chance. With a flick of Zyra's wrist, the entire squad froze in midair. Weapons, armor, bodies, all lifted effortlessly, hovering like puppets on invisible strings. Ethan's breath caught. Holy! The soldiers struggled, panic flashing across their visors. What the hell? We can't move. Zyra sighed, almost bored. You mortals always think you have control. Then she closed her fist. A surge of invisible energy slammed into the soldiers, sending them flying backward into the metal walls. Their weapons crumpled like paper. The room fell deathly silent. Ethan slowly stood up, staring at the aftermath. Zyra turned to him, her violet eyes glowing. I told you, Ethan. You woke me up. Now, you belong to me. The power that shouldn't exist. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his brain struggling to process what just happened. You just. He gestured wildly at the unconscious soldiers. That was insane. Zyra smiled. You haven't seen anything yet. Ethan took a step back. Okay, great. So let's address the very big problem here. You're way too powerful, and I have no idea what's going on. Zyra simply studied him, as if waiting for something. Then, without warning, she closed her eyes. The lights flickered. Ethan felt something shift in the air again, like the universe itself was holding its breath. The console screens in the room glitched, displaying alien symbols Ethan couldn't understand. The station's AI voice crackled to life. Warning. Gravitational distortion. DTECTD. The walls creaked as if being pushed and pulled by an unseen force. Ethan grabbed onto the nearest stable surface. Zyra, what are you doing? She slowly opened her eyes. And for the briefest second, the world around Ethan cracked, like reality itself had just split apart. Then, just as suddenly, it snapped back into place. Zyra blinked, her expression blank. Interesting. Ethan's knees felt weak. Define interesting. Zyra exhaled softly. I am remembering. The station is no longer safe. A deep rumbling filled the air. Ethan turned to the station monitors. His stomach dropped. More ships were arriving. The station's defense grid was activating, red warning sirens blaring across every deck. Zira tilted her head, watching the chaos unfold. Ethan clenched his jaw. This isn't just a random security squad, is it? Zira shook her head. No. She turned toward the viewport, her eyes flickering with recognition. They're here for me. Ethan swore under his breath. Who's they? Zira met his gaze. The ones who locked me away. They are coming for her. Ethan barely had time to process her words before the station's comm system blared to life. This is Commander Rael of the Zenith Dominion. The entity known as Zira must be surrendered immediately. Failure to comply will result in full station lockdown. Ethan frowned. Zenith Dominion. Zira exhaled sharply. It was only a matter of time. The monitors flashed, showing a fleet of sleek, dark warships surrounding the station. Ethan's pulse spiked. Okay, that looks very bad. Zira didn't seem concerned. Ethan turned to her, frustration bubbling up. Are you gonna explain who these guys are? Because right now, I'm really regretting fixing that stupid artifact. Zira's lips curled into a small smirk. You should regret nothing, Ethan Gray, she said softly. You saved me. Ethan rubbed his temples. Yeah, pretty sure I doomed us, actually. Zira stepped closer. You are not doomed. The station shuddered violently. The Zenith fleet was locking weapons. Ethan's stomach twisted. We need a plan. Zira's eyes flashed. We do. Ethan stared at her. Oh no, I don't like that look. She smiled. We're going to take your ship. Ethan's eyes widened. Wait, hold on, my ship. Zira simply raised her hand. Ethan felt a strange weightlessness surround him. Then, without warning, the entire world disappeared. The truth about the alien girl. Darkness swallowed everything. Ethan's breath hitched as the world blinked out of existence. For a brief, terrifying second, there was nothing. No station, no air, no light, just a vast, empty void. Then, the universe snapped back into place. Ethan stumbled, landing on cold metal flooring. His ears rang, and his stomach churned from the sudden shift in reality. He was no longer on the station. Instead, he stood inside a dimly lit cockpit. A control panel flickered with unfamiliar symbols. The walls were sleek, not human-made. Zira stood beside him, perfectly calm. Ethan groaned. What the hell? Where are we? Zira smirked. Your ship, of course. Ethan froze. He spun around, his heart dropping. She was right. They were inside his ship, the Starflare. But how? He hadn't piloted it. He hadn't even seen it since docking at the station. And yet, here they were. Zira tilted her head, amused. You think too small, Ethan. Distance means nothing to me. Ethan exhaled, pressing his hands against the control panel. Okay, so you just, what? Teleported us. Zira's violet eyes glowed faintly. In a way. Ethan let out a frustrated laugh. Yeah, great. I love that answer. Totally reassuring. Then the ship's alarm blared. Incoming transmission. Zenith Dominion Falaise ship. A massive warship appeared on the Starflare sensors, sleek, ominous, armed to the teeth. Ethan swallowed hard. I think they found us. Zira's expression remained unreadable. Of course they did. They'd been looking for me for centuries. The ones who locked her away. The holographic display crackled, and a figure appeared. A tall, cold-eyed Zenith commander stared at them. His black uniform gleamed, and his expression was pure steel. This is Commander Rael of the Zenith Dominion. His voice was sharp, unwavering. You are harboring a classified anomaly. Surrender her immediately. Ethan glanced at Zira. Anomaly. That's not very polite. Zira chuckled softly. They're not polite people. Commander Rael's eyes narrowed. You don't understand what you've released, human. That creature beside you is not an ally. She is a remnant of an ancient war, a weapon that should never have been awakened. Ethan stiffened. His instincts screamed at him to listen. A weapon. Zira exhaled softly. Typical. Rael's gaze sharpened. You think this is a game? She burned entire worlds, human. You think she cares about your life? Ethan looked at Zira. Tell me he's lying. Zira didn't answer immediately. Her silence was louder than any explosion. Ethan's stomach twisted. Oh, hell. Rael continued, voice sharp as a blade. The Celestials, her kind, were not heroes. They were destroyers. Their power was limitless, but their judgment was flawed. We sealed them away for a reason. Zira's expression darkened. You sealed us away because you feared what you could never control. Rael's lips curled into something between a smirk and a snarl. And we were right. A heavy silence filled the cockpit. Ethan's mind raced. Zira had saved him. She hadn't hurt him. But this Zenith guy, he spoke with the certainty of someone who had seen the worst of her kind. So what was the truth? Ethan clenched his fists. Who had he just unleashed upon the galaxy? Nowhere left to run. Rael's voice turned deadly. This is your final warning, pilot. Surrender, Zira, or be destroyed. Ethan looked at Zira. She smiled. Then, she turned toward the controls and flicked a single switch. The Starflare's weapons activated. Ethan's heart leaped into his throat. Whoa, whoa. What are you doing? Zira tilted her head. Surviving. The Zenith flagship locked missiles onto them. Ethan grabbed her arm. You said you weren't a killer. Zira's smile faltered, just slightly. I don't kill without cause. Ethan's breath came fast. And this isn't cause. She paused, just for a second. Then, the first missile launched. Ethan shouted, Zira, do so me thing. She raised a hand. The missile froze midair. The Zenith ship fired another. Zira flicked her fingers, and the second missile disintegrated before it could even reach them. Then, she turned to Rael. Her voice was quiet, almost sad. You should have left me sleeping. Then, she closed her fist, and the first missile turned around. It shot straight back at the Zenith flagship, slamming into its shields with a deafening explosion. The flagship lurched. Ethan's hands trembled as he stared at her. Zira turned to him, her expression unreadable. You don't trust me. Ethan swallowed. I don't know if I should. She sighed, looking at the damaged flagship in the distance. I don't blame you. For the first time, Ethan saw something different in her eyes. Not just power, not just confidence, but pain. A quiet sadness that made him hesitate. She wasn't just a weapon. She was something more. But what? Ethan exhaled. We need to get out of here. Zira nodded. She pressed a hand to the control panel. The Starflare's jump drive spun to life. Faster than it should have. Ethan blinked. That shouldn't be possible. The ship lurched into hyperspace. They vanished, leaving behind a crippled Zenith warship and a commander who looked far too satisfied. The truth they're hiding. The Starflare tore through hyperspace, the cockpit bathed in the eerie glow of streaking stars. Ethan sat in the pilot's chair, arms crossed, staring at Zira. She wasn't looking at him. She stood near the viewport, her violet eyes locked on the vastness of space. For the first time since she had awakened, she looked uncertain. Ethan exhaled slowly. All right, no more games. No more cryptic nonsense. Who the hell are you, really? Zira's jaw tensed. Ethan pressed on. The Zenith called you a weapon, a celestial. They acted like you were some kind of universal disaster. He leaned forward. Tell me they're lying. Zira's fingers curled into a fist. For a moment, She didn't speak. Then, finally, she turned to face him, and Ethan saw something he hadn't seen before. Not arrogance, not amusement, but guilt. She spoke softly. "I don't know." Ethan froze. "That's not an answer," he said. Zura took a slow breath. "It's the truth. I don't remember everything." Ethan's frustration spiked. "What does that even mean? You're this superpowered being that just tore through a warship like it was paper, and you don't remember why they locked you away." Zura's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. "I remember. Fragments." She turned back to the viewport. A war, a betrayal, and then nothing. Ethan studied her. "You're saying you were erased?" Zura hesitated. Then she nodded. "Yes. A past that was never meant to be found." The Starflare's navigation console beeped. Ethan glanced at it. They had exited hyperspace. Zura turned to him. "Where did you take us?" Ethan cracked his knuckles. "Somewhere to get answers." Outside the viewport, a massive debris field stretched into infinity. Zura's eyes widened slightly. "This is a graveyard." Ethan nodded. "Not just any graveyard. This is the Ghost Belt." Zura's voice was quiet. "The lost battlefield." Ethan tapped a few controls, bringing up a holomap. "I've been around, Zira, and I've heard a lot of stories. There was a war long before the Zenith Dominion ruled the stars. A war they don't talk about." He looked at her. "Your war." Zira's expression was unreadable. Ethan continued. "If the Zenith wiped your memories, that means they were hiding something." He gestured to the debris field. "And I bet whatever they were hiding, it's here." Zira's gaze flickered with something unreadable. Then she whispered, "I know this place." Ethan's breath caught. "What?" Zira's fingers trembled slightly as she reached toward the glass. She didn't just know it. She had been here before. The warship that shouldn't exist. The ship's scanners beeped. Ethan checked the readings and felt his blood run cold. "Azura." Her eyes snapped to him. He pointed at the scanner. "Tell me that's a glitch." Zira stiffened. Because in the middle of the wreckage, something was still active. A massive ancient warship drifted in the dark, its hull cracked and covered in battle scars. But its core was still pulsing. Zira took a slow step forward, whispering, "Impossible." Ethan swallowed. "Yeah, starting to feel like nothing is impossible anymore." The ship's ID flickered onto the screen. Celestial warship, no VA Prime. Ethan looked at Zira. "I'm guessing that name means something to you." Zira exhaled sharply. "That was my fleet." Ethan's mind raced. Her fleet. Which meant this ship had been here since the war. Frozen in time. Forgotten. Until now. Ethan clenched his fists. "We need to get aboard." Zira nodded, her face unreadable. But as they approached the dead warship, a deep rumble echoed through the Starflare's hull. Ethan's eyes widened. What the hell was that? Zira's gaze turned sharp. She didn't need to answer. Because on the scanner, something moved. Inside the warship. Something that shouldn't be alive. The ghost in the machine. The Starflare docked onto the warship's exterior airlock. The moment Ethan and Zira stepped inside, the air turned heavy. The ship was silent, but not dead. Faint power still hummed in the walls. Zira ran her fingers along the metal. This place, it remembers. Ethan shivered. Yeah. Well, let's hope it's friendly. Then, a hologram flickered to life. A figure in celestial armor stood before them. Tall, unmoving, face hidden beneath a battle-worn helmet. Ethan froze. "A friend of yours." Zira didn't move. Her expression was unreadable. Then, the hologram spoke. "Zira Prime, you have returned." Ethan stared at her. "Prime." Zira didn't answer, because she was staring at the figure, her hands shaking. The hologram continued, voice cold as steel. You were presumed destroyed. You are now classified as a traitor. Ethan's heart dropped. Zira's breath hitched. Then, the warship came to life. Metal groaned as massive turrets rotated toward them. The hologram's voice was final. Security override engage. Terminate the intruders. Ethan's blood ran cold. Well, that's bad. Zira clenched her fists, her violet eyes glowing. No, her voice was steady, unyielding. This is my ship. The warship's systems glitched. The turrets froze mid-movement. And for the first time, the ship hesitated. Ethan's pulse spiked. Zira stepped forward. Her voice was barely a whisper. Show me the truth. The ship obeyed. The holograms shifted. And then, Ethan saw it. The recorded moment the war had ended. A battlefield. Celestials turning against their own. And at the center of it, Zira, standing alone. Betrayed. A betrayal across time. The holographic battlefield flickered, its edges glitching as if the past itself was struggling to be remembered. Ethan stood frozen, watching the scene unfold before him. It wasn't just a war. It was a massacre. The celestial fleet was in flames, ships torn apart by blinding energy pulses. On the battlefield below, armored warriors clashed, but the fighting wasn't between celestials and the Zenith Dominion. It was celestials against celestials. A betrayal. A war within their own kind. At the center of it all, one figure stood tall, glowing with uncontrollable power. Zira. Ethan turned to look at the real Zira beside him. She wasn't breathing. Her violet eyes were locked on the hologram, unblinking, her entire body rigid with shock. She whispered, "No." The moment everything fell apart. The hologram shifted, zooming in on the past Zira. Her face was wild with emotion. Rage, betrayal, devastation. Across from her, a group of celestials stood in formation, weapons raised. One of them, a tall, regal warrior with silver armor, stepped forward. His voice was cold, filled with authority. Zira Prime, you are out of control. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Prime. That title again. Zira wasn't just another celestial. She had been their leader. The holographic Zira's expression twisted with betrayal. I fought for our survival, she snapped. And you call that out of control? The regal celestial's voice remained cold. You defied the accord. You broke the balance. Zira stepped forward, trembling with rage. I stopped waiting. We were dying. I acted. The celestials didn't lower their weapons. They feared her. The regal celestial raised a hand, glowing with energy. We do not act without the council's will, he said. You were warned, Zira. You were given a choice. Her face contorted with fury. Then I choose to live. The hologram exploded into light. Zira unleashed her power. The battle that changed everything. Ethan shielded his eyes as the hologram rushed forward, engulfing the entire chamber. Now, he wasn't just watching. He was standing in the memory itself. Celestials screamed as shockwaves of raw energy erupted from Zira's form. The ground cracked, and ships in the sky shattered into burning wreckage. Zira was unstoppable. Ethan's pulse pounded. He had seen her strength before, but this was terrifying. She wasn't fighting for power. She was fighting for survival. But it didn't matter. Because no matter how hard she fought, she lost. A coordinated strike from multiple celestials sent Zira crashing to the ground. She struggled to rise, energy crackling around her. Her own people surrounded her, weapons charged. And then, the regal celestial stepped forward. His eyes were full of something worse than hatred. Pity. We will not kill you, he said. We will erase you. And then, everything turned to white. Back to reality. The hologram glitched violently before shutting off completely. The chamber fell into complete silence. Zira staggered back. Ethan caught her before she could fall. Her hands were shaking. Her breathing came in shallow, uneven gasps. Ethan's voice was gentle. "Are you okay?" She clenched her jaw. "They betrayed me." Her voice was flat, emotionless. Ethan studied her carefully. "You really don't remember?" Zira swallowed hard. "I remembered the pain, but not the reason." She lifted her shaking hands, staring at them. "They turned on me. They called me dangerous. But they were the ones who struck first." Her eyes darkened. "I wasn't the traitor. They were." Ethan suddenly had the horrible realization that this wasn't just about the past. She was reliving it. The same anger, the same betrayal, the same power on the edge of breaking free. Ethan's pulse spiked. "Hey, Zira, breathe." Her glowing eyes snapped to him. For a second, he wasn't sure if she recognized him. Then she blinked. Her hands lowered. The tension in the air lessened. Ethan let out a slow breath. "Okay, that's progress." Zira turned away, voice barely above a whisper. "They made me a monster." Ethan hesitated. Then, carefully, he said, "No, they made you afraid." Zira's gaze flickered. Ethan stepped beside her. "You were fighting for something. You believed in something. Maybe they were right to be afraid." He looked at her, "But that doesn't mean they were right." For the first time, Zira looked lost. "I don't know who I am," she admitted. "I don't know if I was a hero or a mistake." Ethan exhaled. "Then maybe it's time to find out." Zira glanced at him, uncertainty in her gaze. Ethan nodded toward the warship's central command console. "There might be more data stored here," he said. "If we dig deeper, maybe we can find out what really happened. The truth the Zenith don't want you to remember." Zira hesitated. Then she nodded. They stepped toward the command console. But before they could activate it, a voice echoed through the chamber. "I was wondering when you'd come back." Ethan and Zira froze. A figure emerged from the shadows. Another Celestial, one who was very much alive. His glowing silver eyes locked onto Zira. And then he smiled. "Hello, sister," the brother who never forgot. The chamber hummed with energy, the air thick with something ancient and unspoken. Ethan's heartbeat pounded in his ears as he stared at the new figure standing before them. A Celestial, not a hologram, not a memory. Real, alive, watching them. His silver eyes gleamed with intelligence, his tall frame cloaked in a battle-worn celestial suit that pulsed faintly with golden energy. Unlike Zira, he seemed calm, collected, like he had been expecting them. And then he smiled. "Hello, sister." Ethan stiffened. "Sister." He turned to Zira, expecting shock, anger, anything. Instead, she was completely frozen. Her violet eyes locked onto the stranger's face, unblinking. She whispered his name. "Oris." The Celestial who never left. Oris took a slow step forward, his movements graceful, deliberate. "You still remember me." His voice was smooth, but laced with something. Sad. Zira's jaw tightened. "I don't remember everything." Oris tilted his head. "No, but you remember enough." Ethan could feel the tension between them. Something deep, something raw. He cleared his throat. "Does someone want to fill me in? Because this whole long-lost sibling reunion in a haunted warship thing is making me real nervous." Oris finally looked at Ethan. "You travel with a human." There was no hatred in his voice, just curiosity. Zira glanced at Ethan, hesitating. "He helped me." Oris smirked. "A human, helping the Celestial. Now that's something new." Ethan sighed. Yeah, laugh it up, space wizard. Who are you, and why are you still alive when every other Celestial is either dead or locked away?" Oris chuckled softly. "Ah, I see why she keeps you around." Zira's expression darkened. "Stop playing games. How are you here?" Oris's smile faded. "The same reason you are, Zira." His silver eyes gleamed. "Because the Zenith were afraid of us." The hidden truth. Oris waved a hand, and the warship's ancient systems flickered back to life. Holograms burst to life around them. Data, old star maps, battle plans. Ethan took a step back. This place is still running. Oris nodded. Barely. They tried to erase everything. But I preserved what I could. Zira folded her arms. Why? Oris studied her. Because I knew, one day, you'd return. The holograms shifted. Images of the Celestial Council, the leaders who had once ruled their kind. The same faces Zira had fought against in the holographic memory. Ethan's eyes narrowed. The guys who betrayed you. Oris nodded. The ones who called you dangerous. The ones who feared what we could become. Zira frowned. You say we. Oris exhaled. Because it wasn't just you, Zira. He turned toward one of the flickering screens. A new name appeared, glowing in golden runes. Project Omigie. The Cieli style is Cyan. Zira's breath hitched. Ethan frowned. That does not sound friendly. Oris tapped the console. It wasn't. It was a mistake. The data shifted, revealing biological scans, genetic modifications, energy readings far beyond anything Ethan had ever seen. Oris's voice was quiet. They weren't just ruling us, Zira. They were changing us. Zira's eyes darkened. What do you mean? Oris looked at her. The council experimented on us. They were trying to create the perfect celestial, one who could control the very fabric of the universe. Ethan's blood went cold. Like reality itself. Oris nodded. Like time. Like existence. Like fate. Zira whispered. Me. Oris nodded. You were their first success. The ultimate betrayal. Silence fell over the chamber. Ethan could see it in Zira's face. The realization was hitting her like a collapsing star. She had always known she was different, that she was powerful, that the Zenith feared her. But now she knew why. She wasn't just a celestial. She was their creation, a living experiment, a weapon, a mistake they had tried to erase. Zira clenched her fists. They used me. Oris's gaze was steady. Yes. Ethan stepped forward. Wait, if the Zenith knew all this, why not kill her? Why not destroy her? Oris hesitated. Then, for the first time, he looked uncertain. Because they couldn't. Zira frowned. What? Oris took a breath. They tried, Zira. They tried to end you. But something happened. He gestured to the console, and the final entry of Zira's old war records appeared. A single line of text. Zira Prime. Final status. UNCOGTINABLE. Ethan's stomach twisted. That's not a good word. Oris shook his head. No, it's not. Zira's voice was almost a whisper. What did I do? Oris locked eyes with her. You broke time. The truth they didn't want her to remember. The air grew heavy. Ethan could barely breathe. Zira's hands trembled. That's not possible. Oris exhaled. And yet, here you are. He took another step toward her. The Zenith didn't want to kill you, Zira. They wanted to hide you from yourself. They erased your past, your memories, because they were afraid of what would happen if you remembered. Ethan's pulse pounded. What happens if she remembers? Oris's silver eyes locked onto Zira's. And then, in a quiet, deadly voice, he said, the universe resets. The end and the beginning. The chamber was silent. Ethan felt the weight of Oris's words crush the air from his lungs. The universe resets. He glanced at Zira, expecting her to react. Anger, denial, shock. Instead, she was completely still, not frozen, not afraid, just processing. She whispered, that's why they erased me. Oris nodded. Yes. Ethan exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Okay, let's break this down because I'm seriously not handling this well. You're saying Zyra broke time itself. Like the whole damn universe. Oris folded his arms. Not exactly. She altered it. She rewrote fate. Zyra's voice was quiet. How? Oris turned to her, silver eyes steady. Because you died. The death that should have been final. The holograms shifted again, replaying the last moments of the Celestial War. Zyra stood alone, facing the council. Her body was wounded, flickering with unstable energy. The council members raised their hands, unleashing a final devastating attack. A pulse of white light consumed everything. The screen glitched, and then nothing. The battle logs ended. No record of what happened next. Ethan's breath caught. Wait. Are you saying she actually died? Oris nodded. Yes. Zyra whispered. Then how am I here? Oris turned to her. Because you rejected it. The word sent a chill down Ethan's spine. You didn't accept your fate, Oris continued. You didn't let time end. You forced the universe to keep you. Ethan's mind reeled. That's insane. Oris smirked. Yes, and that's why it worked. Zyra stared at the flickering hologram, her hands clenched at her sides. I changed time itself. Oris nodded. And the universe has been unraveling ever since. The price of defying fate. Zyra's heart pounded in her chest. Everything made sense now. Why the Zenith never killed her, only sealed her away. Why the universe felt wrong. She had become something outside of time. A paradox. A force that wasn't meant to exist. Zyra closed her eyes. She should have died. Instead, she was here. And now she was remembering. Oris took a slow step forward. His voice softened. Sister, the Zenith were not your greatest enemy. Zyra's eyes snapped to his. Oris's expression darkened. The universe itself is. A reality that fights back. The warship shuddered violently. Ethan grabbed onto the nearest panel. What the hell was that? Oris's face grew grim. It's starting. Zyra's voice was sharp. What is? Oris turned to her. The correction. Ethan's stomach twisted. I'm really hating all these cryptic warnings. Oris. Explain. Now. Oris exhaled. The universe was never supposed to have you, Zyra. It's been trying to fix that ever since. Zyra frowned. Fix it? How? Oris's silver eyes dimmed. By erasing you again. Zyra's breath hitched. Ethan's blood ran cold. Hold on. You're saying reality itself is going to. Boom. The entire warship trembled. Suddenly, the holograms flickered violently, the data feeds warping into nonsensical symbols. A mechanical warning blared through the ship's intercom. Gravitationalquolapis is imminent. Reality displacement, DTCTE. Ethan's heart pounded. Oh, that sounds really bad. Oris looked at Zyra. You don't have much time. Zyra's voice was dangerously calm. What happens if the universe succeeds? Oris held her gaze. Asterisk, everything resets. You disappear. The war never happened. The Zenith never existed. Every choice, every life, every timeline. Gone. Ethan's throat went dry. Wait. So we're not just talking about Zyra getting erased. We're talking about literally everything. Oris nodded. Everything connected to her existence. Ethan's mind reeled. That meant the station where she awakened. Gone. That meant the Zenith Dominion never existed. That meant Ethan. He froze. I was there when she woke up. His voice was hollow. Oris nodded gravely. You are part of her story now. Ethan swallowed. So if she gets erased? Oris didn't answer. He didn't have to. The final choice. Zyra's hand shook. All of this. Everything. The war, the betrayal, her own memories. None of it mattered if she was erased. No one would ever know. No one would ever remember. Everything she fought for would mean nothing. Ethan took a deep breath. So how do we stop it? Oris hesitated. The only way to stop a correction is to replace it. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? Zira closed her eyes. Then she understood. She turned to Ethan. I have to rewrite reality one last time. Ethan's stomach dropped. What? Zira met his gaze, steady. I forced my way back before, but this time, I have to control it. Ethan's pulse spiked. Hold on. Control it how? Zira exhaled softly. By choosing. If she let the universe reset, she would disappear forever. But if she rewrote time one last time, she could reshape the universe, but at a cost. Ethan clenched his fists. What cost? Oris's voice was quiet. You won't be the same, Zira. Zira's lips parted slightly. I know. She turned to Ethan. If I do this, I might not remember you. Ethan felt like he had been punched in the chest. She was giving him a way to live, a way to survive the reset, but at the cost of their bond. He swallowed hard. There's no other way. Zira's expression softened. You saved me, Ethan. A small bittersweet smile crossed her lips. Now it's my turn. The ship trembled violently. Reality was fracturing. Ethan's voice cracked. Zira. She raised a hand glowing with blinding violet light. And the universe shattered. The new dawn. The stars returned. Ethan gasped as reality reformed around him. He was standing on the star flare. Alone. He turned wildly. Zira. Zira. Silence. He ran to the ship's scanners. No records. No traces. Like she had never existed. His hands trembled. Then, a single data file appeared on the screen. Ethan's breath caught. It read, Subject Zira Prime. Unknown. Status. Undetermined. And at the bottom, a single glowing violet symbol. She wasn't gone. Somewhere, somehow, she was still out there. Ethan exhaled. I'll find you. No matter what. The end